David Edward and Jeannette de Beauvoir discuss Jeannette's book series of Sidney Riley mysteries.
Jeannette, how are you?
I'm great, David. How about you?
I'm doing really good. Matter of fact, I'm even happier now that you and I are talking.
Well, thank you.
Well,
I appreciate that. I'm always happy to talk about writing and books and all that sort of thing.
Well, you are an author after my own heart because one of the things I work very hard at is to get book series out. And you have not just the beginning of a book series, but you have a couple book series. And you just had a book come out. And let me read it, Dead in the Water. Correctly saying it, not in the winter, which would blow the whole thing up. No one would ever say it that way, of course, but Dead in the Water. But that's the 8th book in a series that just came out. So let's talk about all of that. That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a really fun series to write. I hope it's as fun to read as it is to write.
Well, it looks like it's doing pretty good out there. I mean, there's 100 reviews of the first book and it rolls right along and its numbers seem people are reading it and reacting positively to it. So let's jump in. I want to talk about two things. One is just your overall writing process. So when you're writing these books, what does your day look like as you write one? And then as you write a book and you discover it's a series, either because you planned for it to be a series or you didn't, and I don't know, you'll tell me what the answer is. Let's talk about how you develop the story for a book, and then also how you keep that story going over a series so that they're related in a way that makes people interested and they want to read more. So I'm talking way too much, but those are my two questions. Go.
I'm really glad actually that you asked them because I never thought about series. When I first started writing, I was always thinking about, here's one story, I got one story to tell, and then you move on. But my writing process, which I do not advise anybody else follow, by the way. I think that most really great writers, or most writers in general, probably have a plot in mind when they start writing especially a mystery series. And I tend to change my plot as I go along because my characters change it. And that to me is what the series is about. It's about the characters. It's about readers getting engaged with and interested in the lives of these people that you're presenting. And obviously the plot's important, especially since this is a mystery series. But it's also the characters, the people, so that at the end of the book, folks feel like they know them a little bit. And in the case of the Provincetown series, it's also about knowing a place. So I think the planning for me is more about, how is this person going to grow, or this group of people going to grow from the beginning of the series as you go through? Because if on the 8th book, my protagonist is still emotionally the same as she was during the first book, I'm doing something wrong, because that's not real. That's not the way people are. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I wanted to ask you a question on that point, because this is something I struggle with. How do you decide when to bring in new kind of permanent characters? You're on book 8. I'm sure it's not all the same characters from the first book. I'm sure new ones have shown up. How does that process work for you? And specifically, a character in a book that's part of a book, but then one that you decide, now this is a resident of your town. Or he or she's going to stick around. And then how do you plan all of that and integrate that?
Well, that's one of the reasons, David, that I set it in Provincetown, which happens to be where I live. It's a tourist town. And that's really important because you've got sort of this wash of people coming in and out. So you've got the opportunity to have a lot of different characters that may stick around or may go away and come back, both of which I do. And it keeps you from falling into the Murder, She Wrote problem, where in that series, she lives in this little town in Maine. And after a while, you either are murdered or you are a murderer if you live there, because it's a little town.
Right.
So we solve that here by having, a place where there are people who come and go. And how I decide, it really depends on how much the new characters hook in with the ones that are there. I've got the protagonist. She's got a boyfriend. She's got a close friend, all the things you want to. She's got a weird relationship with her mother, which most women will identify with pretty strongly, I think.
Right.
And then there are other people who come and go, people that she works with. And if it feels like it's sinking to me, again, it comes back to the characters. If it feels like they're sinking, then maybe I'll bring them back, or I'll keep them there. I've got one who was in a previous book and disappeared for a book, but then came back because it just felt like, oh yeah, this is a good place for him to fit in. So for me, although the plot is obviously important, it's really much more important to present this group of people. One of the highest compliments I got was one reviewer said that after reading a couple of these books, she could hear my protagonist's voice in her head.
Okay. That's
I
great.
hear voices in my head too, and people call me crazy. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, and I let them guide me. A lot of the time, characters will get into a dialogue that's going to change my plot, which is why I said at the beginning, I don't quite do it the right way. I have a vague idea about where the book is going. But I can be surprised, and I've often changed my killer or changed something fairly major in the book, just because as I put people into situations together and have them talking together, it says, okay, we're going this way instead.
Yeah. I find the same thing. I will have a scene in my head I want to hit halfway through the book, and it just isn't going to, when I start, and then by the time I get there, I'm like, it's not going to work. The characters have changed.
Right. Exactly.
Because what I try and do is I try and make sure they all make good decisions, but sometimes I don't give them all the information to make the right decision, but I don't want them to make a dumb decision, because I hate that.
Right, exactly.
Now in my books, everyone always dies because it's all gunfights and stuff. So one of the things, I will have a character stick around when I'm just exhausted of finding yet another new name for kind of the same generic, narrator, or person you got to have a conversation with or whatever. But so what does your writing day look like? I mean, so when you've decided to start a new book, that's a process in and of itself. But when you said, okay, I'm now writing this book, what does a particular writing day look like for you?
So I'm an early morning person. So I'm usually up by 5:30, and I live a 5-minute walk from the water, which is wonderful.
Oh, that's
so
great.
I generally start my day, I take a cup of coffee and go down to the water, sort of breathe. In the winter, it's a little bit windier for breathing. And then I come back and sit in front of the computer, honestly.
Okay.
And that is the best time for me, because I'm clear and I haven't, the phone hasn't rung, emails, I can ignore the emails, for a while. I tell everybody before 10 o'clock in the morning, just don't contact me.
Right.
Or if you do, you're not going to get an answer.
Right.
Because it's really easy to be distracted. One of the things I learned was, about in 2006, I got a fellowship to one of the dune shacks out here on the Cape, which meant 2 weeks with no running water and no electricity. And the only way to write was to bring a manual typewriter with you. And what I realized was how pure that is, that when you're working with a typewriter, all you can do is write. You can't go back and edit. You can't check your email. You can't Google something. All you can do is write. And I try really hard during those morning hours to make my computer into a manual typewriter. I try to say, I'm here to write. That is it. I will edit later. I edit in the afternoon.
Okay.
I will look things up in the afternoon. I'll fall into the rabbit holes online, as everybody does in the afternoon.
Okay.
But in the mornings is when I write.
Okay. You just described minus the walk to the lake, which I don't have. I have an owl that hunts me if I go out at night. I have that kind of
goodness
thing. It's pretty cool. It's like 1.5 feet tall. But I think that's good. Now you said, so do you when you edit in the afternoon and when you write in the morning, are you working on a word count, a chapter count? I mean, how do you structure what you're going to get done in a day?
I'm very word count oriented, because I'm pretty deadline driven. If I don't have a deadline for something, it probably won't get done. So I do side work as a freelance writer, and if the magazine says, okay, it's due here, that's good for me, because I put it on the calendar. I say, okay, to get there, it's like the National Novel Writing Month. I used to do that a lot. Where you've got the word count, you want to get 50,000 words by the end of the month, and it's a really great exercise. I do recommend it to people who are starting out writing and want to really put a book together, a first draft of a book together. And that has stayed with me, that sense of, all right, I'd like to get 2,000 words in today. And usually I can, if I really prime myself and write it on the to-do list, 2,000 words on Tuesday, I can do that. I'm very driven by that. If I don't have a deadline, what I'll tend to do is think about the book. And there's nothing wrong with thinking about the book as long as you actually also write the book.
Right.
But it's really easy to spend a lot of time sort of tinkering in your head.
We have now. It's interesting. I've not talked to too many people. I've talked to a couple of people that have ongoing book series, and I think they described a process a lot like yours, which is a lot like mine. I'm wondering maybe if that's the dedication and the structure it takes, to have, because writing a book is one thing and it's very creative. The series is, it's just like you said, there's a little more structure to it, and I don't want to say, I don't even know what word I'm trying to avoid. I mean, it's not like you're a machine or something. It's not a robot typing it out, but you have to be very regimented as you work on it.
Yeah.
So what's your biggest word count writing day? I'm just curious. What's your best day?
Probably 5,000. That's probably the best I can do. What's yours?
6.
Oh, got me.
But
That's why you've written more books in a year than I have. That's why.
Yeah, but yours are better. So, you've got that going.
I'm not sure I go there far. But what you were saying before about the discipline, I think that one of the things that a series teaches you that everyone should pay attention to is that you've got to remember who these people are. I mean, it can be as simple as this person had black hair in one series and you forgot that and made them a blonde. It can be that insignificant, or it can be very significant.
Huge, yeah.
Like, the father died 2 years ago. No, the father's still alive. It's and you really need to do that for every book you write, but even more so in a series is, keep a list somewhere or just say, okay, this person has these attributes and let's stick with those. And they can grow, obviously, as I said at the beginning, but you've got to have the discipline to stay within the bounds of what your readers are going to expect as normal life.
Yeah, and people pick up that little stuff. People will become furious. It will drive them nuts, because if that level of the integrity of the story breaks down, then they get frustrated with investing in anything else. So we do need to wrap this up.
Okay.
Although I'd love to talk to you again.
Time flies when you're having fun, huh?
Yeah, no, I know. I wish we could go longer. So are you working on a book 9 right now, or what are you working on now?
I am actually violating one of my own rules right now, and I'm working on 2 books at once.
Yeah.
I'm working on book 9 in the Sidney Riley series, and I am starting a book in a new series.
Okay. Now, how will you know when the Sidney Riley series is done?
I thought it was done with this one. I really did. I had a long talk with my publisher about it, because I felt like, this most recent one, Dead in the Water, I think is the best. I hope it's the best. I mean, I hope as writers, our most recent work is our best.
Right.
But I thought this is a good one to go out on. And he kind of talked me into saying, look, let's look at some other angles for what she could do, because he doesn't think she's played out. And that's one of the reasons I started writing 2 books, honestly, because, okay, I'll keep going with Sidney because the publisher wants me to, but I also would really like to explore this new person. Yeah.
For me, I just finished, as we talked, and it's definitely the end, at least for a while, because I got to a point I just couldn't put these characters through anymore. I just felt so bad for them. And my books are all violent and chasing and people dying.
There's just so many times you can be shot,
Well, that's the thing. I'm just like, nah, let them rest. They earned it. They're done, Yeah. And I'm starting a new book series too. That's just so interesting. All right. Well, so Jeannette, do you have any advice maybe for someone who not just is going to write a book? I think I've talked to lots of people with that, but let's say someone thinks they've got a book series in them. What advice would you have for them?
My advice really is to look ahead, to really think about, especially with the characters and the setting, to look ahead. I know that one of the things that Agatha Christie said was that if she had to do over again, she would have made Miss Marple much younger, because she starts her out as this elderly spinster, and then she's got, 20 books with her in it. So think ahead in terms of how you're forming your characters, because you're pretty much stuck with them. Again, they can grow and change, but they're still them. Mm-hmm. So think about that and think about the setting. Again, I chose Provincetown partly because I know it so well, but mostly because it's a tourist town. And that gave me the opportunity for people coming and going and things to happen. If you do set it in a small town and you're writing thrillers or mysteries or something like that, you're going to encounter problems down the line with where you get your villains and your heroes and all these things. So really it's about not so much mapping it out, which I haven't done, but just thinking ahead. Do I really want to live with this person in my head for the next 3 or 4 or 5 years? That's the question.
Stephen King said that, and I watched him. I was first going to start, and I was like, "That's the stupidest thing I ever heard, you idiot." And now I'm like, it's just so true, and there's no way to describe it to someone who hasn't gone through this process of making up someone's world for years on end,
Right.
you become, it's not, you don't necessarily like all your characters, but you become
No.
attached to them in a way. Yeah. And
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 you
it
have to be
does
able to live
something,
with them.
and your subconscious does something too. It's some kind of release for your subconscious that just makes you feel comfortable after, not in the mornings, because the mornings you got to write your baseline, but then after the day you feel accomplishment, and there's people who are with you. So yeah, super interesting. Well, Jeanette, I'd love to talk to you longer. Maybe we'll do another one of these. I know you're also an editor, and
I am.
and what they call developmental editor,
That's right.
which many people tell me I still need after 40 books. So
We all need it, David.
we all need it.
One last thing to any people out there who are beginning writers, we all need an editor. Everybody needs an editor. You cannot do your own work. So editors are precious people. If you find one you like, grab them, stick with them.
Yeah, I have a you on your website, you call it developmental editing, and you call it something else, just regular editing, the
Copy editing.
copy editing. Yeah. So I have a copy editor who's fantastic. Just, and it's hard. Just, I can't, I'm just gonna repeat what you said. When you finally find someone that will actually do the work,
And who meshes well with you.
and who meshes well with
that's
you, and who likes the
important.
stories you write and all that stuff. So, all right. Well, we will talk more later.
Thanks so much, David.
Bye.
Thank you for watching. Please consider hitting the subscribe button.